I'm with Dr. Adolfo Reutman from the Israeli Museum, and we're talking about the Shrine of the Book, which is the home of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Adolfo, tell us a little bit about the history of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Who wrote them, and when were they found?
Wow, that's a long story. Actually, the first scrolls, to the best of our knowledge, were discovered by Bedouins by the end of 47, at the beginning of 46, 7, in a cave afterwards called Cave 1, located 1 kilometer north to a place called Khirbet Qumran, or the ruins of Qumran. And this specific place is located on the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea, 40 kilometers east from Jerusalem. And according to the Bedouins, they discovered by then the first 7 scrolls, that by then they didn't know that these scrolls are supposed to be the most important and most well-preserved scroll ever discovered. And afterwards, between 49 and 56, 10 more caves were discovered by archaeologists and Bedouins. And in total today, we have in hands about 25,000 fragments of manuscript from 2,000 years ago. And after having reconstructed, today we have about 1,000 manuscripts from ancient times, strictly speaking, from the middle of 3rd century BC, 250 BC, through the middle of 1st century CE.
Was this the find of the century?
So actually, these scrolls are coming from what we call Greco-Roman times. And it's the first time in history that we have original material coming from Second Temple Judaism just through the tunnel of time to our days.
Who actually wrote these?
That's a big question. Today it's very clear that some of the scrolls were produced in Qumran itself, but not all of them. So supposedly some scrolls were brought maybe by different groups, not exactly the same people who live in Qumran, and maybe even people who were coming from Jerusalem, then was sieged by the Romans. So, but obviously many of the scrolls were part of a library of a very religious community, people who live in Qumran, that most scholars, after 70 years of research, still they argue that in one way or another they were related to a group called the Essenes, one of the Jewish sect in Second Temple Judaism.
When you talk about scrolls, you get an idea of a big scroll like in the Jewish Old Testament. Are these full scrolls, or are some of them just little bits of fragments? What are they?
Most of the scrolls are just fragments of scrolls. Sometimes when we say we have a document, we have just a very small fragment, and that's it. Once it was maybe a complete scroll, but we don't have such a document. Some scrolls are in very good shape. For example, one of the scrolls I have in my collection at the Shrine of the Book is the Great Isaiah Scroll. And this specific scroll is the second largest scroll ever discovered, more than 7 meters of a running scroll from 1st century, the end of 2nd century, beginning of 1st century BCE. And the largest scroll also I have in my collection called the Temple Scroll, published by Gael Yadin in 1977. And this scroll, the physical scroll I have in hands, has more than 8 meters. But this is very unusual that we have such a large scroll.
When you look at the book of Isaiah that you have in
Yes.
the Shrine of the Book, is it exactly the same as our Bibles today?
I would say it's very close, but it's not identical. If you compare the book of Isaiah we have in our modern Bibles to the Great Isaiah Scroll, manuscript A from Cave 1, you can identify about 2,600 variant readings. So it sounds a lot, but many of them are very, very insignificant variant readings. In some cases, you have difference between letters, words, and even just some verses. And as you can understand, it's such an important book in the history of human mankind, a crucial book as the Hebrew Bible. Even a difference in just one letter makes the whole difference. So, but it's very close again to what we call the Masoretic version or the Textus Receptus or the traditional version of Hebrew Bible, but it's not identical.
How many Old Testament books did they find in the caves?
We have, out of the 1,000 manuscripts discovered in Qumran, about 1/4, so around 230, are biblical manuscripts. Obviously, we have several copies of the same book. Like, for example, of the book of Psalms, we have 37 copies. Of the book of Deuteronomy, the 5th book of Moses, we have 30 copies. Of the book of Isaiah, we have 21 copies, but only one, just one, is a full copy of any biblical book, the so-called the Great Isaiah Scroll from Cave 1. And we have, for example, we have no physical evidence of the book of Esther and of the book of Nehemiah in Qumran.
Was the Shrine of the Book purpose-built for the Dead Sea Scrolls, and how does the building look after the scrolls?
The Shrine of the Book was dedicated in April 65 and actually is the first gallery open to the public as part of the Israel Museum. The Israel Museum is, in practical terms, is the National Museum of the State of Israel, open to the public on May 11, 65. So actually, the shrine is the first gallery open to the public. And this building, as a building, is a very famous building. It's a real landmark in modern architecture, built by two architects, one from the States, Armand Bartos from New York, and the partner in his office in the 50s was Friedrich Kiesler, who was born in the present Romania, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but by then he became an American citizen. And the building in itself was built specifically for the Dead Sea Scrolls. So in this sense, the envelope fits into the story of the scrolls themselves.
And does that explain the shape of the building?
Yes. So many features of the building are related to the story of the scrolls. For example, once you come to the shrine, outside you see a white dome and the black wall. And this opposite between colors and geometric shapes, because the white it's a white dome and the black is a wall. So the tension between shapes and colors teaches about the content of the scrolls. For example, the people who are behind the scrolls, they call themselves the Son of Lights. And all their enemies, Jews and non-Jews alike, they call them the Son of Darkness. And this religious and theological tension we have in the scrolls between purity and impurity, good and evil, some kind of dualism in their monotheistic approach, is reflected also in the architecture of the shrine.
Now there's water being poured onto the building. Are there special things that you need to do to protect the Dead Sea Scrolls?
So originally the architects that refused to introduce AC at the shrine, obviously today we have a very sophisticated system of AC, but also another significance for the water is the concept of purity. Purity was a central concept in the religious perspective of this community. And by the way, in Qumran we have the second largest concentration of ritual pools, what we call in Hebrew mikvaot, for performing the practice of purity. In Qumran is the second largest concentration of ritual pools after Jerusalem. But don't forget, in Jerusalem you had the Temple of Jerusalem. Obviously, people who live in Jerusalem, people who came to Jerusalem to go up to the Temple Mount area, they had to purify themselves before going up to the temple. So obviously, you expect to have many ritual pools in Qumran, in Jerusalem, but Qumran is in the middle of nowhere. So in the middle of the wilderness of Judea, the number of ritual pools teaches us also about the significance of purity for the people who live in Qumran.
Are the Dead Sea Scrolls extremely delicate, and what's it like for you working with them?
So most of the scrolls are written on animal skin, on ancient parchment, and about 20% are written on papyrus. There is only one scroll written on copper, and it's called the copper scroll, that actually is held by the Jordanians. And the scrolls, obviously, both are parchment as well as papyrus, are organic materials, so very fragile, very sensitive, and that's the reason why we are forced to rotate the scrolls at the shrine of the book, because the fragility of the scrolls don't give us the chance to have them on display all the time.
Do the scrolls ever leave Israel and go to other museums, or do they just stay here?
Actually, in the past, we used to bring the scrolls. Actually, I traveled with the scrolls in the past. The last time I traveled was to Amsterdam for a huge exhibition on the Jewish civilization in Europe. So yeah, I brought the scrolls, and my feeling was, and I was protected as the American president, okay, and Israel's prime minister. Actually, not. I was protected. The scrolls were protected, and usually when I share with the people the stories, and obviously they tell me, Adolfo, that must be a great responsibility to travel with scrolls. I said yes, but I have only small advantage. They fly only on business class. By the way, the scrolls in the past they had their own seat.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Are they priceless?
Yes, sure. When people they ask me, tell me the value, how you can give a value of a scrolls that is the only extant, most ancient copy of any biblical book on earth, as the book of Isaiah. If I say $100 million or $1 billion, is the same. It's unique. So in this sense, it's a real treasure, not just for the Jews, for the whole human mankind.
Could there be more books out there in the mountains?
I am just the curator. I'm not a prophet. I have no idea. But supposedly, it could be the chance that actually there are more scrolls in the area of the Judean desert, and the whole area of the Judean desert is full with caves that maybe that some scrolls also are preserving them. We don't know, but you never know in Israeli archaeology what is going to happen in the future.
How many visitors come to visit the scrolls?
Actually, it's a very popular place. Usually, the pace of visitors we have per day is between 1,500 to 2,000 per day, even 3,000. So it's a very popular place. In the past, our former general director, James Snyder, he used to say that the shrine and the scrolls are the Mona Lisa of the state of Israel. And in some sense, he's right, because as people regularly, they come to Paris and they know that they have to see the Mona Lisa, even they don't know why they should do. The same is with the scrolls. The magical words, Dead Sea Scrolls, they became so famous, this manuscript, that actually people, they know that they will come to visit Israel, they have to come to the shrine to see the scrolls.
What's it like for you coming here every day and working with the scrolls?
It's kind of magic what happened to me, because being responsible for such a treasure is really a great honor. And for the last 24 years, I am serving as a director of the shrine and curator of the Dead Sea Scrolls at the Israel Museum.
Okay, Dr. Adolfo, thank you very much.
My pleasure, and thank you for coming.